Good evening, everybody. My name is Peter Steeves, and it's my privilege to be the director of the DePaul Humanities Center. I'm pleased to welcome you to another installment in our transformation-themed programming series, as tonight we think together about the complex relationships among art, identity, and ideology. We begin first by acknowledging the traditional territory upon which we gather this evening. Long before Europeans arrived, varied and numerous native people sought to walk gently on this land. They offered assistance to the first European travelers to this territory. They shared their knowledge for survival and living a good life. Among others, the Potawatomi, Ojibwe, Miami, and Illinois inhabited what is now this part of Chicago. While we here today have no power to honor the treaties that were signed, we do recognize that these treaties were brokered under some duress and deception. So it's our hope tonight to honor the good faith with which the native people in this region entered into these treaties. As Potawatomi Chief Matea is purported to have said at the signing of the 1821 Treaty of Chicago, "This is a small piece of land, and if we give it away, what will become of us? The Great Spirit who has provided it for us to use allows us to keep it. We should incur his anger if we bartered it away. If we had more land, you should get more. But our land has been wasting away ever since the white people became our neighbors, and we have now hardly enough left to cover the bones of our tribe." In solidarity with Chief Matea, we recognize the history and legacy of this subjugation, as well as the enduring presence today of Native Americans among our faculty, staff, student body, and community. And it's thus that we seek a new relationship with the original peoples of this land, one based on honor and true respect. That identity is a performance seems to be an indisputable truth. It follows then that identity is an art, that the act of living is an aesthetic act. We fashion ourselves like a potter at her wheel, a painter before his canvas. History, medium, and audience are thus all key to us being the beings that we are. Just as a painter performs a painting by painting it, so an audience performs that painting in the act of seeing and experiencing it. What the painting means, then, cannot be separated from how it means. Its meaning is established in a communal act of formation and reception. To say that we perform our identity is thus to say not only that others are constitutive of our identities, but that identity is not a thing, it's a process. Perhaps not even a noun, but a verb. I am not Peter. I am Petering. It is as well a communal process, one that requires our own action, but also the active reception, the give and take of the community. It's ongoing and shifting, a process that cannot help but appear within a certain context and history, yet contributes toward creating that context and history as well. To be Petering, to be anyone, is to be spun into being on a communal aesthetic hermeneutical circle. We are talking then about that fractured, performative, contextual self that has been popularly theorized for some time in what is often called our postmodern era. Because there is always a context, and context is always changing. The self is destabilized, no longer the sort of unified Cartesian thing that can pull itself up by its own mental bootstraps, cogito ergo summing itself into stable and fixed existence outside of any context other than its own narcissistic self-contemplation. Each context is a new birth, a new performance, a new gift of being. Some of us have embraced this end of modernity and run with it. David Bowie, I think, was a master at Bowieing, living his life as an ongoing work of art. To have lost him last year was painful for many of us. As I reflected on why I was so deeply saddened by the loss, taking it almost personally in some sense, it occurred to me that since we had all helped participate in the communal creation of David Bowie, perhaps it was a death that was hitting us closer to home. Perhaps there's some sense in which I Peter a little less these days. It's true that we do this always with each other, but Bowie was profound about it. It's clear, for instance, that we perform our gender, and that gender is nothing more than a performance, which is not to say that it's thus less real than any other category, because all of the various categories into which we cast our splintered self are performed as well. We perform our sex, gender, religion, race, and ethnicity. We perform our age as well. I am just pretending to be a grown-up right now, acting the way that I've seen adults act in my past. But I truly don't think I am an adult in some deep metaphysical way. It's a game, and we're all playing it, for better or for worse. We even perform our species. My dear friend Rachel Rosenthal was especially helpful in showing me the depth of such performances. Before she passed away 2 years ago, a loss that hit me harder than Bowie, Rachel and I corresponded at least a couple of times a week. And in the 15 years I knew her, I was changed the performance of me countless ways. Rachel dedicated herself to a life of art. She shaved her head on stage during a performance about the Holocaust 36 years ago, and then decided that that persona was going to be who she was at heart, and so she never allowed her hair to grow back, claiming later that it was because that performance has never ended. But also, she enjoyed confusing people's gender expectations, and also because she thought it was beautiful. All of Rachel's life was spent working in solidarity with those who have ended up most marginalized in our contemporary world. And so, Rachel was a champion of the earth and of non-human animals. In her moving performance entitled Zato, for instance, Rachel explained how her dog had grown blind and senile, yet poor Zato continued to try to be a dog. He tried to perform his canineness for Rachel, though it grew more difficult for him every day to wag his tail, chase a ball, or even accept a pat on the head. He tried to be what we all expect from a dog, and Rachel did her best to play the part of a good human. And together, they lived their performances on the stage until they simply couldn't any longer. Even species is performed. And I think of Rachel every day in my life, though especially when I see a dog do something surprising and then suddenly remember to be a dog again. Or when I come face to face with a squirrel on the sidewalk and we lock our eyes and do that thing we do where we stare each other down. Or when a spider inches her way into the light in my living room, I look in her direction and she slips back under a bookcase. All of this is well and good. It's even true, I think. But if it's the case that identity is co-constructed, if it's the case that we cannot help but find ourselves thrown into a world that is already up and running when we get here, with the scripts at least partially already written, then it means that those in power, those who historically have held the narrative pen, are in a position to limit the ways in which we might adopt an identity that could possibly upset their power and question the status quo. Let's consider then the possibility that art might be the best way in which to take up the already aesthetic act of performing one's identity. That art, apart from being an end in itself, also serves as an exploration and manifestation of identity. But let us also think together about the ways in which even in art, the question of power relations comes to the fore. If language is the house of being, as Heidegger would have us believe, then we're born into a house that is already standing when we arrive. And the tools of expression we are handed have been precisely the tools that have built that house. So, can the master's tools be used to dismantle the master's house? When I was in college, there was a Marxist of some renown who came to campus and gave a lecture about how best to raise revolutionary consciousness among the workers of the world. I remember him saying that the little things workers have always done already are the seeds of such awakening, but they need to be expanded to include thinking about one's entire class, rather than just oneself. The example he gave was of a secretary in the 1950s who used the company typewriter to type love letters rather than to do her work most efficiently as she could. That the boss's tool was being used for something other than work, perhaps in fact for something antithetical to it, was supposedly the key. Turning the bourgeoisie's tools against themselves was as easy, he claimed, as making that your project. Perhaps. But tools, of course, have values built into them. They are never value neutral. The question of whether or not the master's tools could dismantle the master's house was first raised in this specific way by Audre Lorde more than 30 years ago. And Lorde's answer was a definitive no. Battles might be won from time to time this way, she argued, but never the war. The master's tools can't lead to real change or an actual revolution. When we translate this debate into questions about identity and art, the discussion becomes one of thinking through how an artist, confronted with the dominant tropes of his or her culture, might take up the themes, icons, images, stories, language, and tools of that culture, and find a way to do something that points them in a different direction, especially one that allows expression of his or her identity, when it is precisely that identity that the dominant culture keeps sublimated, oppressed, and marginalized. In some sense, art is always faced with doing something like this, creating something new out of something old. But when it comes specifically to confronting the most powerful structures and ideologies from a position that doesn't afford one access to that power, and often does not even acknowledge the artist's full subjectivity, then the challenge is greater and the demand more immediate. This is a subtle business. Once he gets his hands on those tools, the modern artist often attempts to parody or satire something, both of which typically fail to acknowledge the true complexities within the project and the ways in which the parody or satire become complicit in that which they are supposedly mocking. There is some deeply thoughtful irony and satire in the history of art, and comedy in general can be more revolutionary than tragedy, I think. In fact, we're going to talk about that in a couple of weeks right here. But here is also, and perhaps more typically, the sort of satire that attempts to think itself as somehow outside of history and above the culture that it's satirizing. It points to something horrible and ridiculous about the dominant culture, but it does so by attempting to place itself outside of that culture, infinitely distant from that at which it points, and thus not implicated in the same history and the same structures in some way. Rather than admit its own complicated enmeshment in the past and the world it has inherited, it tries to teach us in the way that propaganda tries to teach us, sloppily, in a word, ugly. Banksy, I think, has done some amazing things. His 31-day residency 4 years ago in New York City was inspired and inspiring. It caused us to rethink what art residency is. It asked us to think about the political connection to each piece he created. It took up what is supposed to be merely a backdrop to art and showed us that this too is always already art. But his 2015 curated ironic Disneyland in the UK, which he entitled Dismal Land, missed that mark in many ways, thinking that it somehow stood far away from that which it was mocking, thinking that the signature Disney is somehow radically different from the signature Banksy at this point. The failure here, I think, was on an ontological level. Now, it's easy for a critic, for a philosopher such as myself, who doesn't have the talent or take the risks to create such art, to sit back and judge. And that's not what I'm about, or what I want tonight, or any DePaul Humanities Center event to be about. But it's important, I think, to acknowledge just how difficult and complex this all is, how easy it is for it to go wrong. To choose a different example, and one I think was a great success, we might consider Marina Abramović's installation and performance entitled The Artist is Present, where there's a more nuanced aesthetic and politic at work. Realizing that the power of looking, the power of the gaze, has been claimed and controlled by the patriarchy for centuries, she finds a way to bend it, to play with it, to take that power for herself, and yet not use it to oppress. Sitting in the museum across a table from guests who lined up to sit across from her, Abramović let her audience experience the power of that look, but she consistently used that power to empower the person sitting opposite. That is, she admits she can't really leave the power on the table. She admits that she's trafficking in heady and potent stuff. But then she does her best to show that when she, as a woman, looks, and doesn't just look back, but looks, she can make you be seen. We go to an art museum to look, but here was a work of art that looked at us first. And though the power of the gaze had been commanded by men, and white men at that, for ages, Abramović somehow bent that power back on itself and exposed its artifice, while trying not to recreate its oppressive ethic at the same time. Thus, if it is the case that living is an aesthetic act, that to be truly is a verb, that we perform our identity, that the performance requires reception and always takes place in a context informed by history, that art allows us the chance to express that performative identity, especially for those who stand outside the dominant power structures of their culture. And if that expression is so very complicated to pull off well, then we must be sure to create the conditions in our society that allow these important things to take place and allow those around us to flourish. If this is the all-important business of being someone, then we must treat it as the important work it is, with the arts and humanities celebrated for the pursuits they are, for the nurturing of being that they afford. We must support them, and we must support the art and the artists around us. It is, in a literal sense, a matter of life or death. So, I'm not sure if any of our guests tonight would agree with most of the things that I've said so far, or if they would even think of their own work or analysis of work in the way that I've briefly sketched out here. But this has at least been my thinking about their work. It's one of the privileges of my position directing the Humanities Center that I can organize these sorts of events and bring such talented artists and scholars together. And thus, I welcome them and welcome all of you as we think through all of this some more tonight together, collectively performing ourselves into existence in a way that I hope will be entertaining, educational, and liberating for everyone. And so, to begin in earnest. Sonny Assu is originally from North Delta, British Columbia, Canada. Having been raised as, in his own words, your everyday average suburban white kid, it wasn't until he was 8 years old that he discovered his native heritage. As an artist, his work is an investigation of what it is to be a Ligwilda'xw person today, with all of the complicated interweavings of culture that suggests. A graduate of Anomaly University, Sonny has received various awards and has found his work accepted into public and private art collections throughout North America and the UK. A couple of years ago, my wife and I were visiting the Seattle Art Museum in Washington State, where Sonny's Breakfast series was featured. After spending some time with those 5 cereal boxes, each one an appropriation of an iconic children's cereal, but recreated with native motifs and promising such things as free plot of land in every box, and cereal fortified with your 12 essential lies and deceptions, I immediately knew that we had to find a way to get Sonny to DePaul to share his amazing work with us. And I'm very happy that day has come. Please join me in welcoming Sonny Assu.
Thank you for that amazing introduction. I don't really feel like I have to say anything anymore. I'd also like to thank you, Peter, for acknowledging the Indigenous peoples that are of this area or were of this area. I spent the afternoon at the Chicago History Museum, and I learned a little bit about the Indigenous peoples there. The information that is at that place is very sparse. So I was very happy to listen to you and to witness your acknowledgments of the peoples who are of this Indigenous place. So thank you so much for acknowledging them. Yes, my name is Sonny Assu. I am Ligwilda'xw. That is a grouping of Indigenous peoples, or Native Americans, as we refer to them down here, across the border, down south. I moved back to my home territory of Camp River, British Columbia. I live in the house that my grandmother built over 20 years ago on the Weebekam First Nation. I consider myself of 2 nations. I am Weebekay of the Ligwilda'xw, which is across the way on Quadra Island, where my grandfather was from, and I am Weebekam from my grandmother's side of the family and the nation there. I'm going to start off by just showing you some of my work. I'm really pleased to be showing you some earlier stuff. This is stuff that I haven't thought about for quite a while. Some of this work dates back to about 11 years ago. This is the stuff that propelled Peter to reach out to me, so I wanted to show you this. This is the Breakfast series from 2006, and it is in a collection of the Seattle Art Museum in Washington State. This is a series of work that I created in response to my finding out about my Indigenous heritage as a young child. As Peter mentioned, I was about 8 years old. At that time, in grade 3, I was learning about myself unknowingly. And my teacher at the time was talking about the Kwakwaka'wakw people, as they were commonly referred to back then, all in the past tense. And I was learning about these people and where they used to live. and what they used to eat as the traditional food source, and the artwork that they used to make. So again, all in the past tense. But I got really excited by all this because what I was recognizing was that the area that my teacher was speaking of was the area that I spent my summers. And the food that my teacher was speaking about was the food source that I just happened to be eating because I just thought it was food that we ate, so salmon and seaweed and eggs, fish eggs and seafood and all that kind of stuff. And he was also speaking of the artwork that these people used to make. And what I saw in relation to there was my stepfather at the time was a carver, a traditional Northwest Coast carver. So I got very excited by all this, and I ran home and I told my mother about these amazing people that used to be alive. And she looked at me and go, well, that's who you are. And it was that moment in time, it was in the early 80s, and this is a time when I see as the modern pinnacle of our modern pop culture era we're being marketing to. We have advertising and branding that's propelled at us on a daily basis, and we have these objects that we have rights to. Much like Banksy, you were speaking of earlier, when he sees using and appropriating images from pop culture, I was doing the same thing. So this is the Breakfast series, and it really, at the time, started off as a piece that, for me, was just exploring humor, but then exploring that humor through that pinnacle of 80s pop culture and mixing it up with my learned identity of being a Kwakwaka'wakw person. And these were the cereals that I ate when I was a kid. So, there's Lucky Charms and Fruit Loops and all that kind of stuff. But I reappropriated them and made them into General Custer's Lucky Beats with that 3 pot of land in every box. And that one spoke to the stereotype that Manhattan was traded for a handful of shiny beads for the native peoples. We have Kwakwaka'wakw Barnett Pops, which speaks to the delicious fried bread that a lot of Native Americans and Indigenous peoples eat. Kwakwaka'wakw Treaty Flakes speaks to my specific treaty nation. And we all, I'm assuming a lot of people know about treaties, and Peter mentioned that earlier in your introduction about how treaties were broken. As colonization moved from east to west in Canada, I kind of see the government kind of has given up when they hit the Rockies and said, we're probably going to wipe these people out. We're not even bother signing any treaties. And that led to the modern day treaty process, where British Columbia is the only province in the Dominion, or the former Dominion of Canada, that didn't sign any treaties. So about 25 years ago, a number of Indigenous First Nations in British Columbia started the treaty process, the modern day treaty process. And my nation was one of 5 that came together to work on their own treaty. Over these past 25 years, out of over 100 different distinct First Nations in British Columbia, only 3 modern-day treaties have been signed. And even my treaty process, the treaty nation that I belong to, has dwindled down from 5 First Nations to just 1. Everyone else is kind of split off and has pursued their own interests, which is really divide and conquer at its finest. What I like about this piece is, this is a piece that's now 11 years old, and what I really appreciate in showing this work and having it on display in places like the Seattle Museum and other institutions is that people always bring something interesting and new to the conversation. And as a piece that started off as something that was mostly just for me being humorous, which was a tool for me to welcome people into these very heavy conversations. But having the piece seen light 11 years after the fact, and people saying to me this speaks to issues around food security and environmentalism and extinctions of specific species of wildlife becomes very important, especially around food security. In Canada, we have many Indigenous First Nations that lack access to basic food security, especially in the north. We have people who need to spend $16 on a head of lettuce, a head of iceberg lettuce, which you can get at your store here for like maybe $1, if that. So it becomes really interesting, and to have this work get new life all the time. So I really appreciate that. This is called Coke Salish, and if you just kind of glance by this, you'll just kind of see it as the Coke sign. I made this piece, or I came up with this piece in 2003, and I produced it in 2006. And I came up with the idea in 2003 when Vancouver was awarded the 2010 Winter Games. And what I wanted people to understand with this piece was that they weren't just coming to Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. They were coming to unceded Coast Salish territories. And the Coast Salish peoples are the collectively known Coast Salish peoples in the Vancouver area are the Musqueam, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Squamish First Nations. Together with the Ligwilda'xw First Nation, they came together to form the 4 host nations. So if you watched the 2010 Winter Games at all, you may have heard that terminology being tossed around. And those are the 4 host First Nations that welcome the world to Vancouver. So again, like I really wanted the people to understand that when they were coming to Vancouver, they were coming to unceded territory. And for me, being Kwakwaka'wakw, living in Vancouver at the time, in a traditional sense, if I was to live in that area, I would have to ask someone from one of those nations permission to live within their territories. And so for me, this is my way of asking that permission and repaying that respect by making a work that speaks to their experience. This is LaShonda version 1, 5,000 ancestors in your pocket. This piece was, the idea for this work was sparked by, one, the global advertising campaign around 2006 for the iPod back in the day with the click wheel. But the idea was really kind of gestated by witnessing 2 people standing in line to get on a bus. And they were plugged into the little iconic white earbuds, and they were scrolling around looking for their favorite song to listen to while they were going to work or doing whatever they were doing. And they were standing next to each other, both had iPods, both had the white earbuds, and they ended up sitting beside each other on the bus, but they didn't look at each other at all. They were just engrossed in their device. And what I found fascinating about this is that the marketing tool for the iPod and various Apple products nowadays really say that these electronic devices are tools to unite the world around us. But we can kind of almost see the opposite effect in that happening, because we take our devices out and we look at them and we're not even really paying attention to the world around us. We're ignoring everything around us. So that becomes a really fascinating experience to witness. This is coming from the DePaul series as well, where I was kind of speculating that at some point in the future, traditional dancers and cultural practitioners might be using technology to ready themselves for various cultural ceremonies. And so I painted these 3 paintings called I Hamatsa, the LaShonda, and I Hamatsa dancer. The Hamatsa is a traditional winter ceremony of the Kwakwaka'wakw peoples. And it's just this very fascinating ceremony that takes place during LaShonda. And so I really wanted to kind of speculate that this technology that we covet, which becomes our new mode of almost totemic representation, where we're no longer part of, a raven or a bear or an eagle clan. We're part of the iPod, the Android, the iPad, all that kind of stuff. So I was speculating that at some point in the future that these devices would be used to ready a traditional dancer for ceremonies. Now that I'm living back in my home territory, I'm getting more connected to my culture in a way that I've never had access to before. And I've only been to one so far, and I've taken my daughter with me to culture nights, where we get together and we learn ceremony and we learn traditional songs and dances. And the night that I was there, I was thinking about these pieces in particular because I had this assumption that we'd start using technology to ready ourselves and to enfold technology into our traditional ways of life. But what I recognized at that night was that these people who have been cultural practitioners for a lot longer than I haven't even considered using technology in that mode at all. So it was very powerful to see people from my family step up to the drum log and just go to town on it and be part of that ceremony. And see the youth get up and dance and not even have a connection to the devices. Because we see a lot of people in today's age, especially youth, are just constantly plugged into the little devices, just scrolling around and looking. And to see them not even consider that in that hour and a half was just truly amazing. This is from the iDrum series. This is a series I started in 2006 and ended around 2011. And it started with the one up here, right here. This is called iDrum. And what I wanted to do, especially with the first three here, is I wanted to speculate or even just think about how the raven as a trickster is trying to find new ways to get ingrained into our society, where the trickster, especially the raven, really wants all the attention to be placed on itself. So I was just kind of thinking that the raven is transforming itself into the iPod to have the attention put back onto it. But again, I also wanted to think about how technology becomes this form of personal totemic representation, and myself being someone who is of the Apple clan, the iPod became a very common tool in my daily life. With the first three up top here, then we have the raven. This is basically the story of the raven and the sun, that the raven is listening to his iPod while he's stealing the sun from the chief. This one here is the Hamatsa creature called the crooked beak. And again, the little iPod mini is in there, and you can see the earbud just right there. He's listening to stuff while he's doing his thing. And this one here is called iDrum Hotel California. And I know some people in the audience will probably understand the Hotel California reference. And I've always asked people, and people kind of born after 1990 will probably have no clue what I'm talking about. But I always ask, do you know why I call it iDrum Hotel California? Because it has eagles on it. That's an eagle design right there. So as I started working on this series, it started to become more abstract. As you can kind of see here, where I started abstracting the form line even further. And when we consider Northwest Coast art in general, when you think about tone pools, there is an element and a very distinct design style from the Northwest Coast called form line. A lot of the northern Northwest Coast peoples use form line in their art practices. So when you see a totem pole, for example, there are elements of form line in that. So there's the form line itself, which contains everything together. There's ovoid shapes that are essentially just rounded, chubby rectangles, and there's S shapes and U shapes and everything else that goes together with that. But what I wanted to start speculating through this series is I just really wanted to kind of remove the notion of traditional containers and the like, and just think about the painting style in a pure abstract form. And so I started breaking the form down and just focusing on the shapes themselves. And later I kind of started to call that the abstraction of abstraction through my deeper painting practice. This one here, right there, and this one. This one is from the iDrum the Red Discovery series, and this one is a commentary on our pop consumption, how we have companies like Apple and the Gap and Starbucks, where they have the Red program where pennies on the dollar go to help people with AIDS in Africa, which is a very amazing thing. But it's all done on a very, very consumeristic level. So when the new iPod comes out or the new iPhone comes out, and there's a new one that came out that's red, we'll drop everything that we have. We might even have the latest iPhone already, but we're going to drop it to buy the new one because that's what we're been kind of constructed to do. But this Red program, again, contributes money to people elsewhere. Right? Here in North America, Canada, and the United States, we will pat ourselves on the back because we bought these objects and we're donating this time and this money to those specific places away from us, but we're ignoring everything around us here. Like I mentioned earlier, in Canada, we have food security issues where, again, a head of lettuce could be $16. We have people in Canada living in remote First Nations that don't have access to clean running water. And this is something that we see on a daily basis on television and the internet and newspapers. There are people elsewhere that don't have clean running water. But there are people living within our own country, and I'm sure there's people living in America as well that don't have access to clean running water. And so that's what I wanted to speak about with those pieces as well. So there's always elements of very heavy political commentaries that are underneath the surface, and I kind of tap on those with titling and conversations. And I feel that the instances of humor and aesthetics help people into those very heavy conversations that I create through some of these pieces. So you might be wondering why there's Captain Kirk and why there's Captain Picard and some old lady. this lady here, this is Emily Carr. Now, Emily Carr is an iconic Canadian painter. She was painting around the time of the Group of Seven, which is an iconic group of male artists that were painting in the turn of the century. And she was pretty badass. She would travel up and down the Pacific Northwest coast in Canada, and she would do so in a canoe, and she would just go and visit these remote villages, and she would paint the daily lives of these people that she saw. The unfortunate thing about her paintings, or some of her paintings, or how we viewed her paintings afterwards, was that it almost seemed to depict the dying race. And there's this stereotype within North America that the indigenous peoples are all gone, and that they're the dying race, they're no longer around. That's not the case. As what as I am an Indigenous person, and I'm here today, and I am speaking to my experience as an Indigenous person. So we are still here. And when I first came up with this series called The Interventions on the Imaginary, I was really looking at Emily Carr's work from that perspective, because I thought she was part of the problem. But in developing new work for this specific series, which I'll show you in a minute, it came to light that she wasn't part of the problem. She was just recording these people that she had great admiration for. The people, the various indigenous peoples that she would come across would welcome her into her communities, into their communities. One of the communities, the Anomaly people, gave her a name and her name was Kliwit, which meant laughing person or laughing one. So she was very in tune with the indigenous peoples, and she really wanted to capture them in a way. And I guess before they had disappeared, but I think she was probably a little bit more optimistic that these people would not disappear, and thankfully we haven't. And the reason that I've included Captain Kirk and Captain Picard, they're going to become relevant in a few minutes when I speak to specific pieces about them. But there's instances through science fiction that have adopted stereotypical Native American iconography and stereotypes within their specific stories. So here are some Emily Carr paintings that I've reappropriated, and I've done these digital tags on top of them. So I sourced all these paintings from various publications of Emily Carr, and I scanned them in, and they could be anywhere from 2 or 3 inches to 4 or 5 inches in a book, and I scanned them in, and I'm able to blow them up to various sizes. But I've done these digital interventions on top of them to tag the colonial landscape, to say that we are still here as Indigenous peoples. And I started adopting, conversations through titling to have an element of humor to welcome people into these conversations, but to speak about various issues around pop culture and how there's this assumption that colonization began and ended 500 years ago. The colonization as a construct is still ongoing today. It started over 500 years ago, but it is still relevant and happening today. And there's ramifications that are part of that. So here we have, from left to right, we have Space Invaders on Emily Carr's painting of Hiena. Choking an ovoid, and the ovoid is that kind of, and this is the ovoid right here, actually, this is a good way to speak about it. So this is the ovoid here, this is the ovoid shapes that become part of the whole. So you can kind of see these floor pools in the background where you can see little bits of ovoids and structures that come together to make the form line. And I'm abstracting those and bringing them to light in this kind of 3D form. Choking an ovoid is actually in reference and an homage to an iconic Canadian painter, a contemporary Canadian painter, who's a friend of mine. His name is Lawrence Ligwilda'xw. And he's this very salty painter who is very critical of the colonial landscape. And he's a good friend of mine, and we've had a number of conversations, and I've always just heard him say something like, you can just go choke an ovoid. And that's just basically why I called that piece that one. Because in the painting that Emily Carr has made, it's called Strangled by the Growth. So I just figured choke an ovoid was a fun way to do this. And the last one over there is called Photobombing the Zinnaqua. She's gonna be mad. And I wanted to really kind of relate to digital natives, and digital natives is a terminology for the youth that are coming up today, anyone in the last 10 years who have been born into this digital construct of technology that is always with us on a daily basis. So I wanted to kind of use terminology that they might relate to. And I do relate to it in a way because I'm not a digital native, I'm a digital immigrant, where I grew up post or pre-digital era. This one here is called What a Great Spot for a Walmart. And this one is on the graveyard entrance to Camel River. And like I said earlier, I live in Camel River, British Columbia, which is 250 kilometers away from Vancouver. And this is the graveyard entrance to my grandmother's home village. And this one here in the middle is the postcard that I made for my latest exhibit at the Vancouver Art Gallery called Become the Witness. And this is a picture that I took about 10 or so years ago, and that marked 100 years after Emily Carr's first visit to Camel River. And this one over here, this Thunderbird figure, welcoming figure, is a replica of what could be found, or what would have been found at the graveyard entrance. This graveyard is still there. We still use it. My grandmother has now been interned in this graveyard. But I wanted to speak about, with this piece in particular, what a great spot for a Walmart, because about 500 meters away is this commercial development that was built about 20 years ago. And this commercial development was built to bring infrastructure and money into my grandmother's community, my grandmother's First Nation. But what I wanted people to understand with this piece was that, we shouldn't be paving over these very culturally sensitive areas to provide for ourselves. I fully feel that every First Nations person in Canada and the United States should be able to do what they want with their land and build the infrastructure that's going to be for the betterment of the people. But we shouldn't be thinking about it in the colonial construct of destroying it to build up places like Walmart. This one is called "It Was Like a Super Long Time Ago That People Were Here," right? And again, this speaks to the notion that every issue around colonization happened 500 years ago, but it's still an ongoing struggle. This one is called "Making a Beeline to Ligwilda'xw, Salmonberry Frat for the Win, Starbucks Fail, LOL." And this one is in reference to something that happened in the early 2000s, around 2003, I believe it was. There was a little mom-and-pop coffee shop, cafe, in the village of Masset on the islands of Ligwilda'xw, formerly known as the Queen Charlotte Islands in northern British Columbia, really close to the Alaskan Panhandle. This town at the time had about 700 residents, so very, very, very small town. But the cafe was called Ligwilda'xw, and they thought it would be interesting or it would be funny, or even as fun, to call themselves Ligwilda'xw, because the Haida referred to their men as bucks, and so they figured Ligwilda'xw, we'll put those things together, we'll have a good laugh, and we'll have a good time. Unfortunately, Starbucks didn't think it was too funny, and they sued Ligwilda'xw. Long story short, Starbucks lost, and Ligwilda'xw was able to retain to be in business for a while. So the Starbucks is trying to sue them for copyright infringement. I recently just put this one up back on my Instagram because Starbucks just released a new Frappuccino called the Unicorn Frappuccino. It's this pink collaboration of goo, and I thought it was kind of funny because this is this pink abstract purple design, so I thought it would be interesting to kind of cross-market myself and piggyback on Starbucks marketing for a minute. We have Become the Witness, Reinvaders, and the only thing more pathetic than Indians on TV is Indians watching Indians on TV. This is a quote by a character named Thomas Builds a Fire from a Sherman Alexie film called Smoke Signals. And so what I started to think about with a lot of these images is how I was interacting, or how these digital tags became interactive with the scenery that I was appropriating from. This one is called Homecoming, and this is the first one that I started thinking about alien encounters, and thinking about these ovoid shapes as alien ships, or as I call them, UFO-voids. And this was inspired by petroglyph markings that can be found in and around my home village on Quadra Island. And I just started putting these shapes in the sky and made them look like they were coming down from the stars. And what was an interesting byproduct of this piece is when I actually had it up about this size, actually, as a vinyl wall install. So I had a whole wall with this big image on it. It was pretty amazing. When I was able to have it blown up this scale, I was able to see that, there's this guy here who's dipping in fish and he's just kind of looking up, just out of the blue, he's just looking up. He's looking up at these UFO voids, and we got this person here and this person here kind of, breaking that fourth wall, to borrow terminology from television. And they're kind of looking at you going, are you really seeing this right now? There's these things coming down from the sky. And so I really started to think about this in terms of this alien encounter. And then thinking about how these petroglyphs that can be found at my home village, these heads look very large and elongated, and they're always kind of like waving. So I kind of thought they were like these kind of like alien, records of alien visitors that at some point my ancestors' future aliens come down and say hi. This one is called Tel Chakotay, or BRB, and this one is on a James Everett Stewart painting. And Chakotay, for anyone who might not know who Chakotay is, I'm hoping that there's some Star Trek nerds in the audience that may kind of think about that. Chakotay was the first officer of the starship Voyager that ended up getting lost in space. As they were making their 70-year journey back home, this is when I start to get really nerdy about things. When they were making their 70-year journey back home, they came across this planet that had markings on it, and Chakotay felt that they looked similar to markings that he had seen in the jungle as a youth with his father. As they were kind of trekking around this planet looking for resources, which was kind of ironic, they came across this alien race who presented themselves as people, an alien race who had visited Earth in prehistoric times and helped the early Native Americans cross the land bridge that was formed between Asia and North America. That theory has been, widely contested as of now, but still it remains that, there's this Native American stereotype that I was playing off of, and thinking about how through Homecoming there was this visit that was coming down, and that through Tel Chakotay or BRB that these aliens were just kind of leaving because they couldn't handle seeing the ramifications of colonization on these people that they were trying to assist. And that sparked some other fun things I was doing, where I had these ovoids coming in and just beaming up the people, where they're kind of almost saving them from this kind of oncoming colonial onslaught. And that's why I had the picture of Captain Picard there in the beginning, because this one is called They're Coming Quick. I have a better hiding place for you. Dorvan 5 will love it. Through an episode of The Next Generation, there was this border dispute between the Federation and the Kardashians, not the Cardassians. And on this planet were descendants of Native Americans. And through Star Trek's lore and fictional history, the Native Americans kind of had enough of what was going on here on Earth, got their own spaceship together and blasted off and found our planet. But the Federation had to be tasked with removing these Native Americans because the Cardassians wanted to have this planet back for themselves. Picard was then grappling with this existential crisis, where he recognized that his ancestors were some of the people that were removing First Nations peoples from North America to begin with. This one here, I can't remember the title, it's kind of weird, but it's called Yeah, Shit's About to Go Sideways. I'll Take You to a Marian's, It Looks Like Home. And this one is done on an Ellen Carr painting of my home village of Cape Mudge. And it's and Marion is in reference to the Star Trek, the original series, and that's why I had the image of Captain Kirk and his faux native regalia. In that episode, they found a planet that was inhabited by Native Americans, and it turns out that this race called the Preservers had removed these Native Americans and put them on this planet, and it just happened that Kirk and the crew had found it, and they were trying to save them from a disastrous asteroid. And so I was speculating that at some point in the past, aliens came down and removed the longhouses and people from my home village. Because what actually happened in my home village is my great-great-grandfather, Chief Maggie Brown, who passed away in the late 60s, was very in tune with the colonial agenda. And he didn't believe in assimilation. He actually believed in adopting Western ways to provide betterment for his people and betterment for his family. So he actually tore down all the longhouses in the village. So once our village had these glorious longhouses that would be inhabited by multiple families, he decided to tear them down and give those families single-family homes. And these last two here is the away team beams down to what appears to be an uninhabited planet. And another one is called Preserver 1. Well, it looks like we got them all. Isn't it great that we save these people from never experiencing the effects of colonization? And then Preserver 2 just gives us an emoji face. And that's my presentation. So I thank you so much for taking the time to see it.
Thank you, man, Sonny. That was fantastic. Thanks. So, Jeff Carter is a multimedia artist and professor of art, media, and design here at DePaul University. He received his MFA at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and has exhibited in Chicago at the Museum of Contemporary Art, the Renaissance Society, the Hyde Park Art Center, and the Chicago Cultural Center. His work has also been shown and celebrated in Germany, Taiwan, and across the UK, and has been profiled in Art in America, as well as Bauhaus magazine. For several years now, Jeff has interrogated the ideologies at work in IKEA as a stand-in for the meeting of modernity and post-modernity, never shying away from addressing the political as well as aesthetic questions that arise in such a project, where modern design and globalized capitalism get exposed as not-so-strange bedfellows. I don't know if the master's tools will ever allow us to dismantle the master's house, but left with only a few disposable Allen wrenches, I have no doubt that Jeff could dismantle the master's furniture and turn it into something truly beautiful and amazing. Friends, it's my pleasure to introduce to you my colleague, Jeff Carter.
Well, thanks so much. It's great to be here. It's a pleasure to be here jaffing with you this evening. It's really a treat to be a program, an interdisciplinary program like this, where I can consider my own practice in a different context, and the theme of transformation has been really interesting for me to think about. Because I often use the word transform when I talk about my work, but I've never really stopped to think very carefully about how that word transform differs from something simpler like change. And I think it's the word form in transform that is important to me as a sculptor. A change can be large or small, short-term or long-term, a tweak or a revolution. But transformation seems to suggest more of a wholesale shift from one category of thinking or one ideology to another. Can you hear me okay? So, yeah, okay, is that better? Yeah. Okay, sorry. In doing so, a transformation, when something transforms one state, a prior state, there should be some kind of residue, some recognizable aspect of the first state still present in the second state. And for me, I'm a sculptor, and I work with materials that had a previous life. They were used for other things before I turned them into my work. So it's a question that comes up when people ask me what kind of a sculptor I am. And when I say I'm an IKEA hacker, it usually means that I need to have more explaining to do. So I'm going to start here with Walter Gropius. Walter Gropius, the founder and first director of the Bauhaus, Germany's influential school of art and design that was active from 1919 to 1933. And the Bauhaus is often described as being transformational in terms of the way that modern art and design has changed the way our world looks to us in many respects. And so, among other things, the Bauhaus had as one of its main goals to unify and equalize all of the visual arts, to remove the hierarchies that separated disciplines like sculpture, painting, architecture, industrial design, textiles, handicrafts, graphic design. All of these things were embraced and in the curriculum, right, as being equal. Later, Gropius would emphasize the need for art, for all of the arts to be integrated with technology and with manufacturing processes in order to better facilitate mass production. So these might seem like totally disparate goals, but at the heart of the Bauhaus philosophy was the belief that art should be in the service of people, that well-designed objects, well-designed spaces to live in, and well-designed things to live with would help make people more organized, happier, and therefore more productive, And these were conditions that had to be met in order to achieve broader goals like social justice and economic development. Amid the turmoil in Europe in 1933, the Bauhaus closed, and many of the primary faculty members, Walter Gropius, Mies van der Rohe, who was the last director of the school, among others, immigrated to the US. Many of them found teaching positions, and they continued to develop Bauhaus theory in a new context in the US, and therefore made these ideas much more international and a lot broader in scope and influence. Of course, and this has had a tremendous, uncalculable effect on the way that our built environment looks today. But of course, the idea of mass-produced modern design did not leave Europe with Bauhaus faculty. In 1943, IKEA was founded in Sweden. I've based many recent projects on my interest in the relationship between the Bauhaus as modernist theory and IKEA as the dominant manufacturer of low-cost modern furnishings that is truly global in nature. So there's many reasons to think that IKEA exemplifies certain tenets of Bauhaus modernism, in that modern design is affordable, it's mass-produced, it is clean line stripped down in order to facilitate its mass production and its availability to everybody. But at the same time, there's many ways that IKEA and the way that we consume modern design today is very antithetical to Bauhaus ideals. And I'll talk about these. And these tensions are where I try to find space for my work so that I can repurpose and re-examine the status of the modern art object. In doing so as well, kind of re-examine the socio-political ideas that drove so much modern design thinking. So this is where I first started thinking about the Bauhaus in particular, and my interest in looking at that in this context of IKEA. So this is a modern art object that never existed. It only existed as a drawing. Walter Gropius and Adolf Meyer proposed this building for the Chicago Tribune Tower in 1922. Obviously, it was not the one that was chosen. I like the Tribune Tower. It's a great neo-Gothic skyscraper, but looking at this, it's amazing to think how fresh this looks. It looks like buildings that are being put up right now. And so this building, this proposal, has become one of the most influential unbuilt buildings ever. And I have, from this drawing, derived a set of working proportions and went about making a series of sculptures made entirely out of IKEA furniture. So this is the first one, called the Tribune Tower #1, made up of IKEA shelving units, steel poles, casters, and live cactus plants that were actually on sale at IKEA in a cute little 3-pack. This is the fifth in the series, and each one had its own characteristics, that responded to the materials that I was using. And in this case, the balconies, for example, are rendered in my version as these little pink pillows that were inflated and deflated with the help of a hidden fan and a timer, so that the building appeared to be breathing. A lot of my work has kinetic elements, so I'm going to show a very brief documentary video showing Tribune Tower #3, the largest of the 3 series. And for this one, I thought it needed an elevator. And the elevator is in fact a video monitor turned on inside that automatically goes up and down. Riding in the elevator, a video loop of my hand with 5 IKEA finger puppets. They came in a 10-pack, but I had to weed out 5 of them. So they just go up and down in the elevator. Pretty happy about it. But I wanted to show this just to introduce the element of my work that occasionally uses motion, uses digital media, video and sound and things like that on occasion. The Tripping Tower series was interrupted. After I had completed that third project, I was doing some research on the Tripping Tower and looking for more information on it. And I came across, just by chance, a group called the Gropius in Chicago Coalition. And I hadn't been aware that Walter Gropius had actually succeeded in building any buildings in Chicago until I found out about the Gropius in Chicago Coalition, which is a group of preservationists that came together to try to oppose the imminent demolition of the Michael Reese Hospital campus on Chicago's South Side. It was a defunct hospital that happened to have 8 buildings that were co-designed by Walter Gropius that were built in the mid-century. So the previous, the hospital campus when it was still occupied, and then this is what it looks like now. By the time I found out about this, 7 of the 8 buildings were already torn down. There's one still standing. See it over here. That's the Psychosomatic and Psychosomatic Institute. But its destruction is imminent as well, I'm sure, because it's just falling apart due to neglect. There's so many things to lament about this situation here. The first being that the city of Chicago cleared this land in order to strengthen their bid for the 2016 Olympics, which went to Rio instead. But the damage had been done. And in doing so, in tearing down 7 buildings designed by Walter Gropius, Chicago is now the #1 destroyer of buildings by this famous architect. No other city comes close. Which is very ironic, given that we're a city that really does put its architectural heritage front and center. But despite all this, I wanted to get involved, and so I kind of put the Tripping Tower project on hold. I was able to get a hold of some blueprints, some original blueprints and elevation drawings of the Gropius buildings. And so with these, I was able to make sculptures that were based on each individual building that had been torn down. Originally displayed in a way that mimicked the original layout of the hospital campus itself. Each one of these, I'm tempted to call them models, but they're not really models. They're abstractions or they're interpretations of the original buildings, again using all IKEA parts. So this is a photograph of the power plant from the campus that you can see from Lakeshore Drive, and my version of the power plant there. This is the laundry building on campus, on the hospital campus in its dilapidated state, and then my version of the laundry building here using IKEA laundry baskets for the curtain glass windows. And something you can't see from the still is there was a timer and a hidden motor inside that would periodically shake the sculpture, and it made a sound like a washing machine on a spin cycle. Another example from this series, the surgical hospital, which was known as the Kaplan Pavilion when it was functional. And my version of that. I will point out that my use of IKEA furniture isn't just because I treat it as a raw material, far from it. I want all these objects, my sculptures, to retain the features that are recognizable as consumer goods, as furniture objects. So they have working cabinets, they have opening drawers, they have functional lighting, they have casters. All these things that you'll recognize. From a domestic object, right? But at the same time, they're referring to an external, something larger of a different scale entirely. Another thing I want to point out is my treatment of the material. very often leave cut edges open and exposed because I want to be honest about this material, what it is, where it came from. The fact that I am, hacking it, I'm using it in a way that it wasn't designed to be used. Which brings me back to Gropius. Walter Gropius is said to have railed against what he called lying facades. And meaning that, in his estimation, material should be what it looks like it is. It was a central idea at the Bauhaus, for example, that despite the fact that an object, a piece of furniture or a building might be mechanically made or made with using production technology, it should still be high quality. It should still last for generations. And so the idea that IKEA is made up of stuff that will barely last a couple of years. You're lucky if you have a piece of IKEA furniture that lasts you through college. And so this throwaway nature of the material itself, if you've ever put together a piece of IKEA furniture, you know it's nothing if not a lying facade. I ended up going back to the Tribune Tower series and then became interested in looking to see if I could expand and look for other trains of thought that were related to these thoughts about modern design and the role of art and technology in modern society. And I looked at what was happening in Russia at the time. At the same time, contemporary to the Bauhaus were a group of artists that came to be known as constructivists. This is an iconic photograph of one of the earliest exhibitions of constructivist sculpture. Constructivism was a term that was actually used dismissively to describe the sculpture of Rodchenko, which you see a little bit of up here. A painter, by the way, thought that saying it's nothing but a construction was a good way to kind of put that work into its place. But the terminology was appropriate, so it stuck. Like the Bauhaus, the constructivists were also convinced that art needed to be put into service to the betterment of society, and that it needed to be integrated with technology. They embraced, even more than the Bauhaus artists did, the look and feel of construction, of industrial materials, and these sort of very linear, linear forms with tension wires and glass and tin and metal and things like that that really spoke to that interest and embrace of a new material and a new language for sculpture. And I always often think about that iconic image, that prevalent image in Soviet art of that time period of the heroic worker who was hoisting up a hammer, to demonstrate the strength of the worker. And this is where he is now, in the DIY era, confused, perplexed homeowner wondering if the instructions are upside down or not. It's turned green, I'm not sure why. So my interest in this exhibition resulted in another series of work called Some Assembly Required. It was an exhibition of 5 objects, 5 sculptures that was shown in Spain. And in particular, I was looking at the works by Georgi and Vladimir Stenberg, 2 brothers that were both part of the constructivist movement, really better known as graphic designers. Some of the best, most well-known posters of the constructivist era were done by them. But I've always been really just kind of fascinated by their sculpture forms. They're these very strange and beautiful linear forms. Now, my forms, back up and say that all of the Stenberg sculptures are lost and presumed to be destroyed. This is the case with so much of this art from this time period in this particular region. Some museums have replicas that have been made based on photographs and drawings and all kinds of things in order to stand in for the original, but that's not my intention. I'm interested in in interfering with the original in such a way to allow the characteristics and the parameters of the IKEA product, that is to say the market, interfere or create some structure that I have to negotiate. So when I'm working with this type of material, it feels like a negotiation. I can't make it do anything I want to. This is not a raw material. It's a very highly refined finished product. And it resists being used incorrectly. And so the interpretations of these forms that I end up making are very much constrained by what's available to me and what those materials will allow me to do. Because they are very difficult and tenacious things. This is a detail of one of the pieces, Construction E, that incorporated sound. I don't have a sample of it now, but I worked with a Chicago-based sound artist named Ligwilda'xw to create a 3-channel sound composition that would come out of this project. A more recent group of work had to do with looking back just pre-Russian Revolution to 1915 and the work of Vladimir Tatlin, who became known as one of the most prominent figures of the constructivist movement. And Tatlin made a small, but I think breathtaking group of work that he called corner counter-reliefs. There was just a handful, there was 3 or 4 sculptures, or pieces, I should say. And they were transformative not only of his practice as an artist, because he was in the transition of moving from being a painter to being a sculptor. And these reliefs are literally showing him leaving the wall and entering the space of the room. But they're not fully there yet. They're still attached to the wall, and they're still sort of tucked in the corner. And so that was I think, an extraordinary moment in the evolution of his practice. But at the same time, it forced an evolution in sculpture itself, because these are made out of everyday materials, and that was radical. Even Picasso, prior to 2 years prior to this, might put a little bit of newspaper or a chair caning or something like that into what was still essentially 2D work. But Tatlin went all out and made these constructions out of everyday materials that he had available to him. I don't think that Vladimir Tatlin could have gotten hold of a nice chunk of white marble to carve, even if he had wanted to. So these the wire and the tin and the wooden boards, all these things that were supposed to be used to build houses and other things like that, buildings, right, being used for art. So my version of this, again, is very heavily mediated by the predilections of the IKEA material. And in many cases, I want you to be able to recognize these things, these parts, right? Venetian blinds here, and that sort of thing. I do take liberties. I added lights, LED lights to this piece that are hidden behind the kind of lights that shift color. But I couldn't resist interfering with those with a little electronic program that glitches the colors and makes them look like they're perhaps malfunctioning a little bit. Factura is a word that came to be used commonly in the writing theory of constructivism, and it's a word that they use to mean the immediate and self-evident qualities of a material. So I thought that was, again, sort of a good pairing for the fact that most of this material is not what it looks like it is. Back to this again, and this will lead me into what I'm currently working on. One of the other things that I think is fascinating about this work, as I mentioned briefly, is that it incorporated everyday materials. Things that were of the vernacular, things that were previously used for other purposes, and then transformed. And in a way, I like to think of this sculpture, the materials of this sculpture, reflecting the social condition, reflecting its immediate physical environment, and in so doing, reflecting its political and social environments as well. This is what was available to these artists before the Russian Revolution, and that's what they used. I've shifted gears a little bit, and not really looking at literal examples of early modern design for my reference material for this next project that I'm currently working on. But instead, I've been looking at these barricades, street barricades, that have been made in a very similar fashion out of vernacular materials, out of whatever the people could get their hands on in a quick amount of time, built collaboratively and reflecting the environment, right? They have an immediacy about them. And they're often very ingeniously constructed. But the reasons they're constructed are not about social theory, right? They're about immediacy. It's about what we need right now. So I've been looking at examples from Hong Kong, in particular, the umbrella protests from a few years ago. So I have a few images from the barricades that have been built in order to occupy space. These barricades made to impede the movement of authorities, to protect the physical bodies of the protesters, and to occupy space. One could study these in terms of more traditional architectural archetypes. We could call these architecture of dissent. There's they're related to other similar types of architecture, such as what's known as disciplinary architecture. And that is to say, and that generally is coming from the state to the society. For example, anti-homeless benches. You know, the benches that don't allow someone to spread out and sleep on them, right? Or anti-skateboarding fixtures, you know, and things like that that are designed to impose a will upon the population in a public space. These are kind of moving in the opposite direction. There's also the type of architecture, and I use the word loosely here, the kinds of vernacular structures that people build illicitly in order to enact small territorial battles in public space. The Chicago Dibs. So I don't know if that's still happening. I think it might be, but people in Chicago, you know, build these oftentimes conglomerations of stuff from the garage in order to save a parking space, or the types of little constructions that are meant to keep people off of the ladder or away from the wet cement or something like that, to keep them from falling into a hole. So I'm interested in formalizing these types of, or thinking about the formalization or the language used or the process used to formalize these types of immediate and emergency structures. Yeah. Right? In case you didn't get the message. So, you know, these are a couple of sketches. I'll show just a few Photoshop sketches where I take items from the IKEA catalog and, you know, in the digital environment, just kind of work out some ideas about how these objects, these polite indoor objects, these user-friendly things, might be made to be more aggressive, more unwieldy, louder, and more dynamic. Right? You know, these are just kind of thinking about ways that these forms might take shape. Right? But in doing so, I'm thinking a lot about interior versus exterior. Right? The furniture, the household items that belong indoors in a private space versus the structures of dissent, the communal objects that are built in order to occupy space and advance a social agenda, the needs of many as opposed to the needs of the individual. And so this is a good metaphor, you know, for the interior versus exterior, like personal consciousness and social consciousness. Right? The difference between taking to the streets in protest or signing a petition on Facebook. It's all good. Like, we need both of those things, right? But they're very different. So this is the first of a series that are where this idea is coming together. And so it's still in progress. I'm still, feeling my way through it. But occupier is how I'm referring to them right now. And so this, this sort of polite object, this indoor object, is sort of taking on a more aggressive stance. And in doing this, I'm hoping to capture that movement from that space in between a transition or a transformation, where there's this interstice, there's this middle space where something isn't quite fully transformed into where it's going. It's not quite this, but it's still not yet that. And in doing so, it occupies a very strange, almost placeless territory. This is too fragile to be outside. It's too loud and aggressive to be inside. It doesn't really have a place yet, and I think that's a powerful place to imagine. So this work, I've got several, two more of these sculptures in progress right now, and a few more on the drawing board. This will open up in 2018 Chicago Cultural Center. I believe that's all I have. Yes. Yeah, thank you.
All right. To close out tonight, LaShonda Katrice Barnett received her PhD from the College of William and Mary and is a novelist and playwright who has been in residence as a visiting fellow at the DePaul Humanities Center this winter and spring quarter. Her debut novel, Jam on the Vine, which, by the way, is for sale outside in the foyer, was an editor's choice pick at the Chicago Tribune, was awarded the Stonewall Honor Award by the American Library Association, won Elle Magazine's 2015 Reader's Prize, and earned her the Emerging Writers Award the same year at the Tennessee Williams Literary Festival. A scholar of music of the African diaspora, LaShonda has conducted over 100 interviews with women musicians, resulting in the volumes I Got Thunder, Black Women Songwriters on Their Craft, and Off the Record, Conversations with African American and Brazilian Women Musicians. While affiliated with the Humanities Center, LaShonda has been working on a biography of native Chicagoan jazz vocalist Abby Lincoln, the subject of her talk tonight. We've been very happy to have hosted LaShonda these past few months and look forward to the rest of the spring with her and to seeing her work published and no doubt start reeling in a whole new slate of accolades and awards. LaShonda will be joined tonight by Maggie Brown, a true Chicago treasure. A performer, vocalist, actress, just an all-around artist, Maggie is that rare talent who has incredible artistic gifts, but also cares deeply about the social, political, and ethical context in which her work is received. She uses music to delight, but also to educate. Maggie, in fact, recorded with Abby Lincoln, and it's a real treat and honor that she'll be performing for us tonight as part of our final presentation of the evening. With musical interventions by the incomparable Maggie Brown, accompanied by the amazing Shawn Wallace on piano, please join me in welcoming to the stage LaShonda Barnett.
Tonight's theme of art, identity, and ideology seem too perfect to be true because they encapsulate my connection to Abby's music on a deeply personal level. I came to Abby's art in '95 and I foolishly included her in the pantheon of jazz singers as I understood them, meaning those women vocalists who interpret the American songbook, who interpret the songs that were written for Broadway show tunes, or the songs that were written by Tin Pan Alley masters like Jerome Kern and Otto Harbach and Cole Porter and Irving Berlin. That was Abby's art, so I thought when I entered into listening to her music in the early '90s. Abby's identity then was not unlike Ella Fitzgerald's or Billie Holiday's to my very young jazz ears. What I came to realize, though, was that Abby's ideology was very, very different from some of the women that we associate with the jazz greats in America. First of all, Abby Lincoln, unlike all of the jazz singers that we celebrate, is singularly recognized for being the one jazz singer who created her own songbook. So rather than focus the majority of her career on interpreting the songs written by others, Abby set out to write the music and the lyrics to her own songs, and that's what I'm going to be talking to you about tonight in depth. And Maggie will be performing some of those songs. I don't think you're singing any song that wasn't written by Abby. So every word out of Maggie's mouth tonight will be that of Abby Lincoln. To begin with, Abby came of age, vocally speaking, in the 1950s. And I put here on the slide within and without the jazz tradition because Abby was always different. Even on her first albums, although she was recording some standards, she was choosing to celebrate African American culture and African American men in ways that hadn't been done before. This is a remarkable album because when she was asked to go into the studio and record this, Abby decided that she was not going to sing a song like exactly, How You Beat Me, Treat Me Bad, Broke Me Down. Ethel Waters had performed on Broadway, My Man's Gone Now. Billie Holiday had written Don't Explain, which is a very famous song about cheating. All of these songs about no good men. And Abby said, you know, I'm going to do something different. I want you to hear a clip by Maggie's father, also a Chicago legend, Oscar Brown Jr., who was a famous composer and lyricist in his own right. In the making of this album, Abby approached Oscar Brown Jr. with a very special request, and I'll let you hear a little bit about that.
Oscar Brown Jr. had also become a part of their circle.
I used to ask singers anyway if I could write a song for you, what kind of song would it be? And most of them didn't have a clue, but Abby had a very definite idea. She'd like to write a song about Max, and they were a team. And together they represented a new day at a time when that was new.
Brown finished the song, Strong Man. In the 45 minutes it took him to get back home after visiting Abby, she recorded it on her 1957 album, That's Him.
She was now, as I said, making the transition into a jazz musician. And I was at that session when Strong Man was done with such musicians as Wynton Kelly and Paul Chambers and Sonny Rollins, and of course Max was there.
I'm in love with a strong man. Once you see him, you have to. And any other would just be the wrong man. And it is easy to see why I love life when I'm loving my strong man and letting my strong man love me. And letting my strong man love me.
One of the ingredients of Abby's original songbook that separates her from singers like Diane Reeves or Betty Carter, Sarah Vaughan, Ella Fitzgerald is this constant negotiation with Africa. And you see this in a lot of the artwork produced by African Americans, be it dance or film or poetry, certainly in novels and in plays. But it's very uncommon to find this in lyrics performed by jazz singers. I've included on this slide the first stanza of the poem, What is Africa to Me? Because it is an idea that Abby dealt with throughout her life as a composer. In 1924, the author of the poem County Cullen published a poetry collection that includes this poem, Heritage. Cullen's heritage depicts an Africa of romantic images such as the copper sun, scarlet sea, spicy groves, and cinnamon trees. However, the speaker's intention is not merely to celebrate the continent, but to reconcile questions about its ancestry. Heritage opens with the question, what is Africa to me? Which is juxtaposed throughout the poem with the narrator's traits of an imagined Africa. In 8 stanzas, the rhetorical question, what is Africa to me, is countered by natural images. Cullen never fully or even partially answers the question, reflecting the tenuousness of the relation between African American identity and actual African heritage. Historically, the appropriation of Africa as a focus for a culturally based memory is rooted in the idea of heritage, and it represents a significant tradition among African American artists and intellectuals. Specifically, among 20th century Blacks, there exists this long tradition of looking toward Africa. Sparked by new nations of Africa that gained their independence in the late 1950s, with the displacement of leaders such as Sekou Touré, Modibo Keita, Kwame Nkrumah, and Patrice Lumumba, African American artists producing in the latter half of the 20th century became increasingly engaged with foreign policy issues, especially as they related to post-colonial Africa. So this would be the late 1950s when many African nations began to get their independence, the early 1960s. This coincided then with a trend of jazz music, many of the compositions of which celebrate African culture, African nations, and Africanisms, those symbols that you would find that reflect African culture. The point is that for historical reasons, including important developments in the New World, Africa begins to emerge in jazz music as an operative concept which can be applied to the historical experiences of African Americans. For Abby Lincoln, the question, what is Africa to me, begins to embody a consciousness that she will reflect in her music.
In the early 70s, I think it was 72, he took a trip to Africa. And after having started a group in America called Women of the Cultural Association for Women of African Heritage, you went to Africa, saw life there firsthand. Was it what you expected?
Yeah, it was. But I didn't go expecting anything. I just went home. And I knew that they didn't know where to place me because I had my hair in braids and I had these African dresses. And they would say to me, what nation are you? I said, I'm a citizen in America. And they would say, oh, everybody knew that I was an African woman. Africa is a state of mind that is part of my life, that is it's a consciousness.
When applied to Abby Lincoln, the question, what is Africa to me, is tied to an investigation of Africa's imaginative and metaphoric influences on the original songs of the artist. Such a query provides a foundation on which to build our understanding of the singer-songwriter's creative impulses, born of what scholar Judy Lynn Conwell calls negotiating dispersion, this idea of what it means to be from another place. In the case of African Americans, to have been torn away from your history and your culture, and what it then means to, in the new land, in the new world, to negotiate your identity based on a place that you know very little about. Significantly, Lincoln penned the lyric to the music of John Coltrane, a song entitled Africa, when she began to write her own music. She loved to tell the story about becoming a singer-songwriter because she had not written many songs prior to her 43rd birthday. And then when she went to Africa in 1973, she wrote a song called Africa to Coltrane's music. Maggie's going to sing a bit of Africa, and from Africa go into Jungle Queen, another tune that bears witness to Africa by Abby.
Jungle Queen. Know what I mean? Jungle Queen. The original Jungle Girl. Who's wonderful. Jungle World. Has everything. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. The original Jungle Girl.
That's amazing. I have goosebumps from the way you are conjuring Untitled Chapter.
That's Auntie Angie. I love it. Thank you.
On the recording, Lincoln's Africa moves into a steady polyrhythmic groove facilitated by James Ntume's conga and the playing of Afro-Cuban percussionists Ray Mantilla and Thomas Duval. The lyric creates an antiphonal statement about freedom as Lincoln chants the names of African tribes and Olatunji sings freedom-related adages from various African tribes in the Yoruba language. It features James Ntumbe on conga and Olatunji on drums and call and response patterns, which Lincoln's voice implies between the singer and the continent. The final verse from the lyric reads, "Beautiful, wonderful Africa, someday I'm coming for to see the promised land. The days of sunshine and nights of heaven's starlight, it's a paradise of sea and sky and sand. With some talking drums, they'll tell of love and laughter. They're telling of a new and brighter day." While the lyric depicts a romanticized view of Africa, a paradise of sea and sky and sand, not unlike County Cullen's poem Heritage, the song also draws on Old Testament imagery, a practice that connects Abby Lincoln to the long tradition of African American songwriters who use biblical influences, biblical references in their music. What is the point of all this looking toward Africa? Well, if you were to mine the poetry and the novels and the lyrics written by African Americans, you would see a trend of what Toni Morrison calls re-memory and I put a definition up. Originally employed by the Nobel laureate in the novel Beloved, rememory constitutes the act of remembering a memory. In the novel, instead of using the words remember and forget, the ghost character Setha invokes the word rememory as a noun. For Setha, rememory occurs when a memory is revisited, either mentally or physically. For Setha, rememory is a thing. When she explains rememory to the character Denver, she states, if the house burns down, it's gone, but the place, the picture of it stays, and not just my remembering, but out there in the world. So in my work, as I've been mining these songs about Africa, written by Abby Lincoln, I've been thinking of them as objects of rememory. Part of the goal of Lincoln's performance of these songs was to connect African Americans to a past that they might not have learned about or have experienced themselves, but was nevertheless premised on something real. Rememory songs can be grouped into 3 categories. Songs that consciously draw on Africa through symbols and images. We call those Africanisms. Songs that acknowledge and celebrate African spirituality and spiritual mythology and praise for personal ancestors, songs about family members. And lastly, songs that bear witness to the history of Black life and the African diaspora. So let me pause here to reiterate that this is a different way, this is a transformative, since the name of the series is Transformations. This is a transformative, if you will, approach to listening to jazz. This is not Tiskitatasky. This is not Satin Doll by Duke Ellington. This is not My Funny Valentine or In a Sentimental Mood or Blue Monk, all of which are wonderful songs, but this is a tremendous departure because these songs are historic and these songs have an aim of connecting an audience to Africa. That had not been done in lyrics before Abby Lincoln. So you heard Maggie sing Africa as Jungle Queen. Now we're going to move on to some songs that deal with Africanisms. Lincoln created songs capable of giving the impression of a place or period by considering the remains of a single image, often resulting in the production of oral sites of memory. Songs capable of transporting the listener to a site where the subjective memory shatters space-time configuration in order to piece together the salvaged fragments into a new meaningful order. In African American culture, one salvaged fragment resides in the image of the bird. The bird became a mythic representation of African life during slavery, beginning with songs such as Two Wings, If I Had the Wings of a Dove, and I'll Fly Away. The writing and performance of songs that deploy black flight and the trope of the flying African inspired a tradition found in every sector of Black literary arts, poetry, drama, such as C. Bernard Jackson's Fly Blackbird and Pearl Cleage's Flying West. Also in literature, Ralph Ellison's Flying Home, Richard Wright's Lord Today, Sterling Brown's Slim and L, and of course, Toni Morrison's Song of Solomon, where the character guitar literally tries to fly. These creative works draw on a long legacy of Black Americans' diasporic reinvention and African folklore-inspired art. For as the scholar Farah Jasmine Griffin observes, interestingly, from the anonymous composers of the spirituals and folktales to poets like Paul Laurence Dunbar and singers like Abby Lincoln, Black people have likened themselves to birds in flight, birds incapable of flight, caged birds, free birds, and especially singing birds. Maggie will now sing a stanza from Abby Lincoln's Caged Bird, and also a stanza from Bird Alone.
Stanza and the chorus, okay? Please tell a little tidbit about how Abby had seen me perform with my dad. You know, she came to the show, she slipped into the audience. They told her, Abby, come backstage. Oh yeah, she was out there, but she went on home. But she really, really liked what I was doing and hadn't seen me performing as an adult or anything. So she invited me to record. Shawn mentioned I got to sing on her Holy Earth CD. And she said, okay, we're gonna do this song called Caged Bird. We're gonna need to do some bird calls. I said, uh-oh. City girl living on the south side of Chicago, I don't know if I'm gonna study up on the bird calls really. But it was springtime. The window was cracked in the other room one morning, and I listened and I heard, ooh. I was like, oh, okay. You make me think about it in a whole new way. Understand it. Birds who live in cages never spread their wings. They sit with ruffled feathers on the tiny swings and speculate the birdseed and while away the day. Tuck their heads in feathers of
several songs carry the flying metaphor, as in Abby Lincoln's original Learning How to Listen, when she sings from the top of the second verse, "Music is a lover with shiny golden wings," or a line from Down Here Below, which reads, "I hear the distant thunder and the crying of the loon," or in the final verse of "I Got Thunder and It Rings," which you'll hear a little bit later, when Abby intones, "When my life on earth is over and the struggle here is won, I will find a new dimension in the rising sun. In the place that is forever, I will spread my wings and fly." Or the dazzling couplet, "We come and we go, the hawk and the dove, causing everything to be a circle of love," from the original Circle of Love. In fact, Abby Lincoln displays the strongest impulse to draw on African imagery, just like you'd find in African folktales. Further musical examples include the title song of Abby Lincoln's fifth album on the Verve label, released in 1995, A Turtle's Dream, where she imagines that she's a sea creature moving slowly through the ocean. Here Abby talks about her connection to the turtle in a clip that was released along with the album in '95.
It's a metaphor, really, this song. I can swim the ocean, and it's deep and wide, and in the house above me abide. And in the house above me, those are my ancestors. The house above me is the house of my ancestors, and I abide there. And I can swim the ocean, and it's deep and wide. And I can't swim the ocean. And sometimes I do wish I could fly like an eagle, but I'm never gonna do it. Walk like a lion, I'm never gonna do it. Soar like an eagle, walk like a lion. I'm always gonna be this turtle that slowly goes. That's who I am. And in the house of
So now we have two examples of the ways that Abby Lincoln looks toward Africa, either literally, such as songs like Africa or Jungle Queen, or by looking at African folklores, mining African folklore, and using some of the symbols and tropes that are repeated over and over in African folklore, like animal imagery. The third and final way that I will consider will be the songs that Abby Lincoln wrote that include African mytho-history or African spirituality and history. The philosophy of Ifa originated with the Yoruba people of West Africa in what is now Nigeria. Ifa teaches that each of us has a single Orisha energy. Orishas are gods. Shango holds a major position in the pantheon of the Yoruba tribe. In the folklore of Yoruba, he is the Orisha, or the god, whose power is imaged by thunder and lightning. Yoruba priestess Louisa Tish has also noted that he is the warmth of the flame, the physical strength, and the spark of human spirit. As the legendary fourth king of the ancient kingdom of Oya, Shango's rule was marked by capricious use of power. One account asserts that Shango was fascinated with magical powers. He inadvertently caused a thunderstorm, and lightning struck his own palace, killing many of his wives and children. In repentance, he left his kingdom and traveled to Kono, where he hung himself. When his enemies cast scorn upon his name, a rash of storms destroyed parts of Oya. Shango's follower proclaimed him a god, and that the storms were his wrath, avenging his enemies. Lincoln draws from this folklore about Shango in her song, I Got Thunder and It Rings. This is interesting to me because when feminist scholars took to writing about Lincoln's songbook, they weren't aware of her education and her following of African mytho-history. So some feminist scholars writing about jazz have suggested that the title, I Got Thunder and It Rings, is Lincoln's way of praising her own gender and her race and her power. While these assertions certainly reflect Abby's free thinking and her independent spirit, what is more relevant to my study is the vocalist's assertion that this song was inspired by the Yoruba god of thunder and lightning. Maggie is going to sing for us the last verse of the song, I Got Thunder and It Rings. These are some images of depictions, sort of contemporary depictions of Shango, who is one of the Orisha. He is always symbolized with the colors red and white, and not coincidentally, the album that this song appears on, Abby is in red and white, and the whole album is red and white.
When my life on earth is over and the struggle here is done, I will find a new dimension in the rising sun, in the place that is forever. I will spread my wings and fly. If you see a streak of lightning, I'll be passing by, 'cause love is emotion. It'll move you to do things, do things, do things. Love is an emotion. It'll move you to do things. I got thunder and it rings. I got thunder and it
Lastly, Lincoln again revisits this trope of looking toward Africa, and one of my favorite songs from her repertoire, When I'm Called Home. And this original from the 1991 Verve release, You Gotta Pay the Band, though less explicitly biblical than her lyrics from the song Africa. The song's title, for example, does signify in Black church vernacular the theme of death and the ascension to the heaven home. But this song also, in addition to drawing on the Black church theme, When I'm Called Home, when I ascend to be with my Heavenly Father, Abby's talking about something else that can't be missed, and that is also the idea of being called to her ancestral home, the ancestral home of Africa. And not coincidentally, she uses the whole song to talk about slavery, which she feels is the story that she wants to talk about the most when she gets to heaven. When I'm called home, I will bring a book. She's talking about her own songbook that tells of strange and funny turns and of the heart it took to keep on living in a world that never was my own, a world of haunted memories of other worlds unknown. I'll tell them of the trouble here when they call me home. When I'm called home, I will sing a song and tell them of a beggar's life where everything goes wrong, where everybody's hopes and dreams are shattered by the wind. I'll tell them of a ghosty world of us and they and him. I'll tell them how the shadows fall when they call me home. And my favorite stanza, when I'm called home, I will tell the stars of the battles that were lost in a world of wars. I will tell the rivers of the children lost at sea, and there she's talking about the Middle Passage, in which there were believed to have been at least 6 million suicides many of them pregnant women who jumped overboard rather than be delivered to the New World. I would tell the rivers of the children lost at sea of how a soul is bartered and what it costs to spirit free. Love how she turns spirit into a verb, how to set the spirit free. Hallelujah, tell a story when they call me home. Maggie's going to conclude tonight singing the song in its completion because it's my favorite. When you listen to Abby Lincoln, as I hope you will do, I've given you a list of all these wonderful albums that you should own. Learn how to listen to jazz differently for the history, for the celebration, for an awareness of what it means to look toward Africa. Thank you.
Yes, wow. I actually was blessed to sing this song at her memorial service in New York. When I'm gone home, I will bring a book that tells of strange and funny turns of the heart it took. Keep on living in a world never was my own. World haunt memories of other worlds unknown. I'll tell them of the trouble here when they call me home. When I'm called home, I will sing a song, tells them of a beggar's life, where everything goes wrong, where everybody's hopes and dreams scattered by the wind. I'll tell them of a ghosty world of us and they and him. That was LaShonda Peter.
Let's keep that going for Shawn and Maggie, LaShonda and Jeff and Sonny. I don't know about you, but I'm inspired. I hope you go make some art, make something of yourself, make something revolutionary, perform yourselves. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll see you next time.